Hello and welcome to another lesson concerning Bluefort's license and subscription app embedded in Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and supply chain, which is also known as finance and operations. In this lesson we shall be discussing consumption-based subscriptions. In the previous lesson we looked at per unit subscriptions, and we saw that per unit subscriptions are mostly upfront subscriptions, while consumption subscriptions are mostly in arrears. So that's the biggest difference. Why do they have to be in arrears? Of course, because as the name implies, consumption subscriptions are based on actual consumption which happened in a specific billing cycle. So that billing period has to pass so that we could calculate the consumption and actually the amount which is going to be invoiced to customers. So let's jump right into the application. You can see the finance and operations client. I'll look into the subscription management module, jump into the cockpit, subscription management cockpit, and then I'll filter on my customer. I'll go right and create a new subscription plan. I'll choose the program type I've used in the previous lesson, which is CSP, but this time I'll switch to consumption subscriptions, and as we can see, by default the billing type moved to in arrears. I have to select my billing posting profile. I'll select the simplest one, and I'll select rolling period type, because it's more applicable towards consumption-based subscriptions, but of course you can use calendar. And I'll hit OK, and then I click the new button to create a plan line. And now in the lookup, as you can see, it filtered out only the items which are consumption-based subscriptions for my CSP program type. So that's a very handy filtering and validation there to avoid errors. As usual, I can also select my variant number. Specifically for consumption subscriptions, I can also select a meter number so that I can do consumption billing based on meterage, but that's the scope of another lesson. I'll cover that in a future lesson. So for now, we'll just be looking at basic consumption subscriptions which are based on estimates. So my estimate is that I'll spend, or my customer actually will spend, around 300 euros worth of Azure consumption in 1 month. The start date, I'll put it as today, 14th September, and the rest of the items are default. Like my unit, I can stop a discount. So that's very similar to what we've done in the previous lesson. So now I have a start date and the next sales action date. As I said, we can also add multiple lines here. We can add as many lines as we would like to, but to keep things simple for this lesson, I'll just create one line and go ahead and publish. Now the trick comes here. Like we said, the master process now will process the subscription because it's published, but in this case, since this is the first month, there will be no action messages which are linked to invoicing, either incoming revenue or outgoing to suppliers. So let's just confirm that. Let's run it. Here we are. There are no action messages generated, but the next sales action date now moved by a month to the 14th of October. So I'll go ahead and pause this video to change my session date to the 14th of October, and we'll see what happens next. Okay, so now my session date is in October. I will just go ahead and run the master process, and now the master process has correctly generated 2 actions, one for sales and one for purchase. However, as you can see, the date from and date 2 of these actions is for the past billing period. Why? Of course, because we charge, as we said, consumption in arrears, not upfront. So we are billing the consumption which happened in the past, in the previous billing cycle. It's also important to notice that we have estimates at this point. So since this is a consumption estimate, it cannot be firmed. So if I try firming actually this action, it will stop me. It says estimated actions cannot be firmed. So what we need to do in this case is actually check what is the actual amount billed to be billed to the customer. Let's change this to 311, remove the is estimate flag and click yes, and same goes for the estimated invoice from our supplier. So we'll say will be invoiced 150 euros, and we also should remove the is estimate flag. So now what happens if I'll try to firm these actions? Then it is possible. Please keep in mind that it is possible to bypass the is estimate flag and have it unticked by default, but that's only possible at the moment if you use the customer metering feature and you register consumption which is actual consumption. In that case, the is estimate flag will be by default unticked, and you can go ahead and post your actions. So this is my sales action, which is firmed now, so it means that it's linked to a sales order. So now I can go ahead and post this consumption based action just like we did in the previous lesson, and we can hit OK. And our action is now posted, so it automatically gets moved to the historical tab. And like we did before, you could also print your sales invoice to be sent to the customer, or of course you could use the standard platform features to auto email the invoice or send it to the Power Platform for further processing and workflows. So that was the lesson about consumption subscriptions. Just to summarize, the key takeaway was that for consumption subscriptions the billing is in arrears, not upfront, and that the reason is of course that we need to first calculate the actual consumption by the customer, like in the utilities industry as well, and then we can bill the previous billing period in the current billing period. And that is why when you run the master process for the first billing period, no actions will be generated. By the way, if you're coming from a utilities industry standpoint, then I will advise you to check out the other lesson about metering, because there you could see how we could upload consumptions linked to a customer meter, either manually or via IoT or web services, which will then be automatically fed to the actions here, which are being generated by the subscription management module. I really hope you enjoyed this lesson, and stay tuned for more lessons coming up soon. Thank you very much.